There are three major goals I want to achieve, and one is to identify that there are different levels of awareness of all the transits that are currently happening now. Obviously, we know that something big is happening. Every astrologer and his cousin Roberta is writing about this. So you know that we are all very aware that we're on the brink of something. And why do we all have different points of view of what's going to happen? We have a general agreement, but it's so varied. So I'd like to have, one of my goals here today is to identify the different levels of awareness of these transits coming up, which I call astrochemical. I made that term up, I guess, but we will talk about that. And secondly, I want to know why what's going on is not available to everybody, and what is the reason we all see things differently. And thirdly, I'd like to find, if we could, the divinity in what is happening, because it's neither all good nor it's all bad, but what is it that we are able to do to maximize the good in it and to minimize the bad in it. So these are the goals that I want to achieve, and I hope that we can meaningfully do so, okay? So the first thing is to identify the raw level of awareness. What does that mean? There's a certain intrinsic meaning in all the planets. And while when you reading from one astrologer to the other, to the other, to the other, they're going to have a slight difference. But there's a message that's coming from the planet. Now, I believe there actually is some sort of a cosmic ray message that comes from the planets, because we have to ask this: there's life, not only is there life on other planets, those planets are alive, and everything that comes from them is from their essence, and it passes across space, and we are the recipients, and we also send those messages. So all living beings on the earth are privy to receiving the messages that the planets send, and I think they are really are messages. When I first got into astrology, there was a question whether it's synchronistic, whether it's just an accident, whether it's actual messages. I believe there are messages, and I believe we receive those messages, and we send the messages back based upon a perception of those messages. So what comes to us is a raw definition of each one of those planets and the nodes and everything. It's raw. It's undifferentiated. I believe that we interpret that through the brain and the pituitary complex. I think the pituitary complex is the receiving station. All of the endocrinological organs throughout the entire body. I think that they are the receivers and the senders. They're the receivers. They get what the planets are sending, and they send back a response to that. And that means that every being alive, if they don't have a very developed pituitary complex, they will be somehow responding. Your dog responds, your cats respond. All beings alive on the earth, every living being responds to what the transits are. Obviously, if there's a hurricane, the trees respond. So I believe that's one of the things I think it makes it wonderful to contemplate, that everything is alive on this planet, and especially the aspects that we are facing now. Everything that we are facing now is not only perceived by us and in business and our personal life, but all of the animals and all of the beings on the earth are responding to something huge that's changing. And I think that we are actually chemically interpreting these messages. So I'm saying, what are those messages? Well, that varies from person to person, which we'll talk about in a second. But what are the raw definitions? And I want you to notice of one thing that's very important that we'll talk about. So what we all know that something's alive in this world, and we're alive, and we're receiving something. Something is lining up. There's an alignment that's got a message for us, and it's inescapable. We're going to talk about the inescapability of it. But we're just talk about the three big ones right now: Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter. Those messages are coming in. That means that there's an intersection of human beings also coming together, a meeting of people. Something is arriving with Saturn. What is Saturn? Well, you read about it. Some people say, oh, it's horrible. Some people say, Saturn is my friend. Saturn is Saturn. And the raw definition we all have read about, we know that there is a hindrance, there's obstacles, there are laws that we cannot escape. The Pluto part of us doesn't care about those laws. And we say Pluto is transformation. Pluto is, we have to say what it is. Pluto is devastation. It devastates the law. It devastates society. It devastates what was. If you've lived through Pluto in Sagittarius or Pluto in Scorpio, Pluto in Libra, you know what it can do. So there's a raw experience that no matter how you interpret it, you have to go through it. There's a certain thing, the same thing with Jupiter. Depending on where you are and how you interpret and how you perceive it, but we're going to see why that's the case. But those three planets that are coming together have a meaningful message to send to society and to human beings. We've all read about it already. We've all been reading each other's material for years. We know this is an intersection of experiences. And I want to go into why that is the case and how it varies from person to person.